Well, Raiders fans, let's be honest. We've had some good back and forths the past couple of years. And a couple of years ago, I certainly had my moment. The big Khalil Mack trade. He's going to be a Chicago Bear. The Bears go on in the 2018 season, win the NFC North, get a home playoff game, and double doink the season away. To which it's, why would you trade Khalil Mack? What's the point of doing anything if you're going to trade away your defensive building block? This is one of those rare guys for the Raiders, especially in recent history over the past two and a half decades. This is a rare guy you took in the first round that really actually panned out, so why in the hell would you actually trade him? And all that. You don't have to regurgitate that. Then last year, the Raiders showed a little progress and growth, and the Bears didn't. So now you're sitting there as a Raiders fan, you're saying, hey, about ready to move out of Oakland, move to the new home in Las Vegas. It's all going to be a whole new dawn of an era for this organization. Still have the Bears 2020 first round pick in tow. Thank you for the one in 2019. Those types of things. So yes, it's crazy because we love trash talk and jabberjaw back and forth. At the end of the day, we both kind of helped each other, I guess. We'll see long term who's ultimately better off for that deal. The Bears, the reality is if they had made that deal and they had Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson, conversation is entirely different. Most certainly. But they don't, because they're the mediocrity of the midway. The Raiders, time will tell how all this worked out. Because here's what you know. Is that you got John Gruden under contract for still a long period of time. Whether he truly finishes out that 10-year contract remains to be seen. But right now, for a cash-strapped organization like the Raiders, ain't no way you're getting rid of him anytime soon. So you're stuck with him one way or another. So you got to hope it works out. So as you bring in new general manager Mike Mayock, and you go into that 2019 offseason, you're expecting some big things to happen. You end up in a situation where you get the 3 first-round picks, because you've got your own, plus you've got the one that you acquired from the Bears for the Khalil Mack trade. Then the midseason trade you made in 2018 to send Amari Cooper to the Dallas Cowboys also netted you a first-round pick. So you got this new general manager. You've got 3 first-round picks. Then you start leveraging some of the additional draft pick capital to bring in somebody like an Antonio Brown. And you're thinking, hey, you know what? Things could turn around pretty quickly in Oakland. And then Antonio Brown happened. And we found out why Pittsburgh wasn't exactly sad to see him go. Because you go from, hey, you're bringing in a legit number 1 wide receiver in the peak of his career to, oh my God, you're bringing a legit number 1 pain-in-the-ass caliber guy into the fold, and when is enough enough? And the way that whole thing went sideways and everything else that happened was just one big, disgraceful disaster. Just a disaster. And I really thought it had the potential ability to significantly hinder the Raiders heading into 2019, because that's a lot of swirl and a lot of drama and a lot of distraction right before your season starts. But to the credit of the Raiders, to the credit of John Gruden, they didn't seem that distracted. This is a team that got off to a 6-4 start. So you're talking about a crew that, you're 10 games through the season and you're thinking they've got a chance at the playoffs. Playoffs? Playoffs? Are you kidding me? No, Jim Mora. Playoffs. They were in position. They certainly had a chance. And when you look at the team that, on the one hand, you probably think realistically because they kind of intentionally went down the rebuild path, that they're going to be a year away. To be there at 6-4, especially with all the crap that happened with Antonio Brown, that was pretty good work. Now, they did go on to lose 5 of their last 6 games, which did ultimately knock them out of the playoff race. So maybe you could argue that the lack of overall talent and depth eventually caught up with the team, and it certainly did. But, you still could take some positives away from that. You got breakout seasons from your rookie first-round pick, Josh Jacobs. You're welcome. Darren Waller, the tight end. Max Crosby, who you took in the 4th round out of Oregon, the edge rusher. This is a team here that had some young guys step in, and make some impact. So if you're looking at this team heading into 2020 and heading into this past offseason, you're starting to think, that things are pointing up for the organization. And certainly. Now, still didn't fully solve, and that didn't get solved in 2019, the questions about the quarterback position, whether John Gruden's really committed to Derek Carr, whether Mike Mayock is truly committed to Derek Carr, whether they truly believe in him, whether he truly is that level of dude. So it wasn't surprising to see them, I guess, looking back on it, go out there and sign somebody to represent some level of competition or some type of security blanket or some type of alternative option in Marcus Mariota. Now, of course, Mariota being Mariota, he starts the season on injured reserve for the first couple of weeks because he's hurt. Big freaking surprise. But this is a Raiders team, again, because they kind of bottomed out a little bit and were kind of cleaning house. Had quite a bit of cap space, so they go out and be a little aggressive again in the open market. They signed Kwiatkowski away from the Bears, signed Nelson Aguilar, Jason Witten, Jeff Heath, Malik Collins, Corey Littleton. So they certainly invested some money to plug some holes and to fill some gaps on their roster, which they absolutely needed to do. And I still think when I look at all these signings, the Witten one just seems weird. I still don't get that one. And frankly, from Witten's aspect, is you spent all those years in Dallas, you retired, then came back to play with the Cowboys last year, so now you're going to sign with the Raiders, man. That was one of the most out-of-the-blue signings I think I've seen in a long, long time. The Kwiatkowski signing, though, made a world of sense. This team needed to get better at linebacker, and now you bring in Nick the Quick into Las Vegas, to the Raiders, where he actually gets a chance to be a full-time starter. And admittedly, when he finally got his chance in 2019 to get some consistent playing time, this was a dude doing some damage and doing some good work. So the Raiders did well for themselves there. The gun going into the NFL draft, knowing what they had done in the offseason via free agency, it was still clearly obvious that they had one primary need that they needed to address multiple times, and that was wide receiver. As it was clearly obvious as you watched the team in 2019, they didn't have receivers that could consistently get open. They didn't have game breakers. They didn't have difference makers. So not surprised in one bit to see them draft Henry Ruggs III in the first round. And Al Davis had to have popped a skeleton chubber. He had to have. Like if anybody could pop a Woody in their grave, it has to be Al Davis. Al Davis would be all over this. He runs sub 4.3 in the 40. That makes him a Raider. The greatness of the Raiders. It's a horrible Al Davis impression in terms of the way it sounds, but philosophically, I'm not that wrong. So we knew they were going receiver, and some folks wanted CeeDee Lamb, certainly. Maybe some folks thought it was Jerry Jeudy. But we had to know at the end of the day, this is the Raiders. And the mystique, the stench of Al Davis still carries over the organization. You think they were going to pass on the fastest wide receiver in this draft class? I don't think so. And so, of course, they took him. And then they surprised folks a little bit later on in the first round by taking Damon Arnett, the corner from Ohio State. Was certainly a little surprise to me. Thought he would have been more of a second-round talent. But they ended up taking him around number 1. Then in round 3, taking guys like Lynn Bowden, who they were hoping to convert to wide receiver, and then Brian Edwards from South Carolina. I really like the Brian Edwards selection. I think this kid has a chance to be a steal. The Lynn Bowden one is a bit head-scratching, especially because you haven't even gotten through training camp. You haven't even gotten your first game. A third-round pick, you're already having to dump him, and not only that, to avoid just flat-out releasing him, you're having to give up a 6th-round pick to another team to take him so you can get a 4th-round pick back. It's bad. You start to worry about these 3rd-round picks that you waste on guys like the Martavis Bryants of the world. So trading for Antonio Brown, they never play it down for you. Spending one on Lynn Bowden, and he never plays it down for you. You start to worry about these things a little bit, and those are the types of things that, if you're not careful, can eventually creep up and bite an organization's square in the ball sack. But that said, I think Raiders fans, and I've had a couple of folks in the past couple of days on Twitter start to ask me about the Raiders and what I think about their chances. I think they've got a good chance. I think they've addressed their biggest offensive need, which obviously was the talent at the wide receiver position. Josh Jacobs is a beast in the running game, and I certainly see no reason, barring injury, that he won't be again in 2020. That run defense is solid. So if you're a team that can run the ball and you can stop the opponent's running game, you can win quite a few ball games in the NFL, and especially when you get into late season situations, as things tighten up, things get a little slower, a little more physical, and especially when you get into the playoffs. And you also got to think about this from a kind of like just a philosophical approach of mindset of there's now certainty for this organization. There's no more Oakland. There's no more we got to play but we're not going to be here long term. They've got their new home. Of course, unfortunately, it's a black hole. It's not going to have any fans, at least immediately. So that really sucks. But Vegas knows who they are now, where they belong. They know where they are. And eliminating that cloud from hanging over the organization, I think, does make a difference, and quite a sizable difference at that. And you can certainly potentially see that manifest on the field, especially when you're talking about a team that's excited. The first year in a new city, a city could be potentially very excited about a team being there for the first go-around. I think that is something that actually kind of builds on the optimism that is around this Raiders organization right now. I do have concerns, though, when I talk about they've addressed wide receiver. You're putting a lot of faith in trying to get a lot of guys like Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards. How well is that necessarily going to go? I still wonder where the pass rush is outside of Max Crosby. He had a great season as a rookie, but who else is there? It'd be nice if Cleveland Farrell, stepped up and played like a top 5 pick. He didn't really last year, but he was a rookie. And sometimes for certain defensive ends, edge rushers, it can take some time to adjust to the game. So you certainly hope that he can play at that top 5 level. Then you look at this secondary. It's a young secondary. You got one of the first-round picks from last year's draft, Jonathan Abram. Now he's healthy. He's going to be back there at safety. You've got Damon Arnett. How is this young secondary going to be able to hold up, especially if they're not able to get a consistent pass rush outside of Crosby? Like, those are things that have to be concerns. And I also look at this, too, and I say, maybe it's more of a larger overarching concern is, Derek Carr has been there as the quarterback for 6 seasons now. 6 seasons now. You're rebuilding on the one hand, but on the other hand, you still tied yourself to the quarterback from a previous regime. It's an interesting choice. And them signing somebody like a Mariota puts out there in the atmosphere that the pressure's on with Derek Carr a little bit. So it's going to be on him to step up and play at a Pro Bowl level this year. Otherwise, there could be big changes in Vegas in 2021. They're going to really have to roll the dice then. I think this team has improved. I certainly don't think that they're of the caliber of the Chiefs, the way the Chiefs are constructed right now. But I think there's a clear differentiation. There is daylight. You've got the Chargers, Broncos, then you've got the Raiders, then you've got the Chiefs. I expect the Raiders to be in the mix for the playoffs this year. I expect them to be one of the wild card teams that ultimately gets in, maybe the 6th or 7th seed. I've got them winning 9 games. Certainly could see them winning 10. I like the direction that they're heading. I'm not convinced that they've got the right pieces or the right people and leadership in place to make them a true championship contender. But hey, after so many years of suck, to see the Raiders be relevant again, be back in the playoffs, would be a good thing, I think, for everybody, and certainly for Raiders fans.